We're in a three-part or four-part series. It's the third part of that four-part series on getting real with God. And the baseline is this. We're saying you do not have to check your brain at the door to be a Christian. We said a couple of weeks ago that you can appreciate science and its insights into how we understand God and celebrate God. And last week we talked about how you can approach the Bible in an authentic way, an honest way, and it can really come alive to you in a surprising set of ways as well. If you missed either of those two sermons, pick them up online because they all form a series, a common theme that uses our friend Job. And today, well, I should say next week, we're going to conclude the series by hearing what Job has to say to us via his example in terms of praying authentically. But today we're going to consult Job about a subject that he knows quite a bit about, suffering. So I need to give you a little bit of a background with that. For most of the book of Job, there is no such thing as the patience of Job. That went away 7 days after he was afflicted with all of his trials and tribulations. He spent most of the book railing against the injustice of God. God shows up in the last few chapters, and now we hear the resolution in the final chapter. Take it away, Phil.
Then Job answered the Lord, I know that you can do all things, and that no purpose of yours can be thwarted. Who is this that hides counsel without knowledge? Therefore I have uttered what I did not understand, things too wonderful for me, which I did not know. Hear, and I will speak. I will question you, and you declare to me. I had heard of you by the hearing of the ear, but now my eye sees you. Therefore I despise myself and repent in dust and ashes. After the Lord had spoken these words to Job, the Lord said to Eliphaz, the Temanite, My wrath is kindled against you and against your two friends, for you have not spoken of me what is right, as my servant Job has. Now therefore, take 7 bulls and 7 rams, and go to my servant Job, and offer up yourselves a burnt offering. And my servant Job shall pray for you, for I will accept his prayer, not to deal with you accordingly to your folly. For you have not spoken of me what is right, as my servant Job has done. So Eliphaz the Temanite, and Bildad the Shuhite, and Zophar the Naamathite went and did what the Lord had told them. And the Lord accepted Job's prayer. And the Lord restored the fortunes of Job when he had prayed for his friends, and the Lord gave Job twice as much as he had before. Then there came to him all his brothers and sisters, and all who had known him before, and they ate bread with him in his house. They showed him sympathy and comforted him for all the evil that the Lord had brought upon him. And each of them gave him a piece of money and a gold ring. The Lord blessed the latter days of Job more than his beginning. And he had 14,000 sheep, 6,000 camels, 1,000 yoke of oxen, and 1,000 donkeys. He also had 7 sons and 3 daughters. He named the first Jemimah, the second Keziah, and the third Keren-Happuch. In all the land there were no women so beautiful as Job's daughters, and their father gave them an inheritance along with their brothers. After this, Job lived 140 years and saw his children and his children's children 4 generations. And Job died old and full of days. The word of God for the people of God.
Thanks be to God.
Now, we know that jazz is very difficult. But reading those names is very difficult as well. Well done, Pastor Phil. No matter what translation, you still have Eliphaz the Naamathite or what have you. But that's on purpose because it's an ancient text that speaks very, very much to our modern times. Because what Job went through as you reflect on it and pray over it and talk with others about it, will reveal that there are 3 very definite things you must know about suffering. And these are gleaned directly from that ancient book. Get a piece of paper, write in the margins of the newsletter or the bulletin, these 3 things about suffering. Non-negotiable. You can take these to the bank. The number 1 thing you must know about suffering is that it humbles our spirits. In other words, the aspect of suffering that we see gives no rhyme or reason for understanding it, and you can never understand it. Job starts off with a fact that he took a priori, just on face value. You be good, then you're going to get good from God. You be bad, you're going to get bad from God. And that explodes. It explodes. It makes no sense at all. And finally, God in the whirlwind says, okay, I love you, Job, and I know the number of hairs on your head, but I also love the ostrich. And I know the number of feathers that she has. And I know Leviathan, the sea serpent. I know the number of scales that he has. My ways are not your ways. And as Job said, I had talked about you of things I did not know. There are trillions upon trillions upon trillions of things, small, invisible, and great and large, in our world and across the cosmos. We'll never understand them. We'll never be able to understand how things fit together. Never. And to think that, well, it's not fair that I suffer, is to put ourselves in the center of the universe, the axis around which the world spins, and that's not right. And Job finally understands it. When we ask the question, why should I suffer? Realistically, why not? We're all created creatures in a world, and we're not the creator. There are ways that we'll never understand. And the first lesson of suffering is to set ourselves off the pedestal of that perpetual toddler syndrome of it's all about me, because it's not. Suffering is a humbling experience. And Job discovered that as he said, I had talked about you in ways I did not understand. So never try to understand why you go through difficulties. You can't. That's the base lesson. And then there's another lesson that comes from that, and that is this. It opens our eyes. It opens our eyes. He sees, finally, God. But was it God in a flame that came down from the heavens? No. In a very ordinary whirlwind, because you had whirlwinds all over the place back in Palestine or in his city of Uz. It's not, but he was able to look at it, and he sees, my eye now sees you, and my ear in something ordinary. Is that what it is? Is that your experience as well? That when you go through something that's really, really trying, very difficult, put you on your back, it can be a relationship, it can be a health problem, it can be a concern about a child, anything. And you go through that and you suffer that and maybe you grieve. And when you're at the lowest point, you're able to see things that you had not noticed before. And those things may be a source of strength, of comfort, of direction, or of beauty. Listen to these words of a man by the name of Ken Brewer. He was dying of pancreatic cancer, and he wrote this. I measure my life in family who speak through tears, who serve me meals on a wicker tray, who pray and love and float. I measure my life in pine siskins who entertain me in feeders outside my window, and Gus, the schnauzer, who curls next to me in bed. I measure my life in friends who do not know my sins, who hug my shrunken body, who break open my heart with words. I measure my life in cancer that has taught me how to measure my life. I sometimes wonder how I would see things differently if after leaving the doctor's office, I heard, "You have 6 months." How would you live differently? Well, friends, we all have such a diagnosis. Every one of us is terminal. When we realize that we will share with Job the depths of grief and of pain, maybe we can start seeing God in the whirlwinds, or maybe God in Gus the Schnauzer curling up. It's what suffering teaches us. It opens our eyes to see the beauty all around. Finally, the third thing you must know about suffering is that it changes our heart. Now, Job's friends weren't friends. They turned out to be anything but. And yet, at the very end, God says to those friends, "You have not spoken to me what is right." Nope, you've not done that at all. You've kept to societal convention without really reflecting with your mind or feeling with your heart. So you go to Job to pray for forgiveness. So they go to Job to pray for forgiveness. And don't you know, Job could have said, "Well, that's karma, isn't it? That's karma. You were bad to me, and now you want me to be good to you?" He was. It says that there was no hesitation. He prayed for these very people that made his life a partial hell. And then there's something else. His fortunes were restored. He had 10 children born to him, 7 boys, 3 girls. So what are the names of the boys? Well, we don't know. But wait a second, this is a patriarchal society. You know, the men had the power and the women had the babies. And that's it. But not so now. The 7 boys, we don't know. But the girls are named. And I'm not going to ask Phil to repeat the names. They were named. What's up with that? It's almost as if they now have equal power. And what's more, he gives them an inheritance. You don't do that back then. Society said, no, the men get the inheritance. And when he gave those 3 daughters an inheritance, that took away from the men, the sons. Society says you're not supposed to do that. And Job said, I do not care what society says. I care now for compassion. I care now for justice. It's funny, when you suffer, when you hurt, you're able to connect more authentically, and your heart can go out to those who are in the pit with you. Your heart can go out to those who are the targets of the stares and the sneers of society because they're not the right people, the good people. Job's heart went out and connected. Suffering taught Job how to love those who are seemingly unlovable and how to stand up for those who have no strength to stand up for themselves. He gave his daughters an inheritance. So let me leave you with an image. I've talked about suffering. 3 pillars of what we've learned from suffering is that it humbles us, it opens our eyes, changes our heart. And maybe it's all wrapped up in, of all places, a technique of painting, where there is, it's called four-edge painting, where a book can be taken, turned on its side, and a skilled artist can bring about a beautiful painting on the edges of the book. But the trick is, when the book is like this, flat, there's nothing there. You can't see the painting. But if you bend the book, you get something like this. suddenly beauty comes from someplace that you had not expected, that you had not seen. It's almost as if it's only when the pages are bent that you can see the beauty that was there all along. May you and I have the grace to be still when our pages are bent, so that God can bring out the beauty in your life that may already be there.